Alrighty. Just quickly make sure that everyone can hear us. I think someone was trying to jump in. Did we admit that? Did Nico get popped in? Yes. Okay, perfect. Invite others from the conversation. Just want to make sure everyone's in. Yep, cool. I can see everyone there. Perfect. Yeah, we'll wait for a couple extra people before we kick it off. So not in any particular rush. Well, yeah, I'm not anyway. I've got I've got the day off tomorrow. I'm going to see the doctor. So yeah, but I was going to do a quick audio check, make sure that everything is working. So 1 minute. It's kind of funny that yeah, like yeah, Black Friday comes around and like we've got the Christmas list sorted, and it's just going in there and just yep, okay, I need to go and get X, Y, Z. I'm like I can't say anything because I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. But I found some really really cool presents for my brothers. I'm actually really excited. I kind of want them for myself. And to be honest, I found a board game, Jordan, that I actually think, to be honest, I think everyone here would love to play. It's kind of like a board game that I've just bought for myself and Amy. Essentially the game is about you have to create elements. So essentially you get given cards of like protons and neutrons and different combinations, and you have to use those cards to essentially create an element. And you get like electrons and things like that as well. It's really really quite cool, and you can be like different scientists like Albert Einstein and Schrodinger. It's like yeah, and you can like trade cards, and the goal is to basically create. I think it's like all these elements up to lithium. I'm like that's yeah. And I was like, I got it because I wanted to teach my daughter about atom, like like atomic structure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've got one on my wish list, which is basically you visit national parks in the US,
Mm.
and like you sort of collect points and like take photos and stuff like that. And it was quite fun when I played it when I was over in the US a month ago. It was quite fun but yeah, so I'll put it on there. It's got nice sort of visualizations and cards and stuff. So yeah,
That sounds really cool. It sounds really cool. Like it's really good when you can find like a game that you truly enjoy. It makes a massive difference.
yeah,
Quickly seeing how the chat's going. Make sure that that's all going. I think just 1 sec. Sorry, chat's going.
sure.
Yep. Okay. Cool. Yep. We're good. So what we'll do is just wait a couple more minutes before we kick off. Yeah, yes. I found there's one game I really want to play, and like again, it sounds super controversial, but it's really really fun. It's called Secret Hitler, and it's again, it sounds super controversial, but it's like there's no like fascist kind of like thing. It's all about deception. It's like one of those games about deception, and essentially like Hitler's got to try and get himself elected, and there's like different means of ways you can do it, but the liberals have got to kind of figure out who they are, like who their party members are, because they don't know, and the fascists know who their party members are, and it's all about a game of deception and deceit, and it's really really fun, especially when you can play like you can yeah, you can play the right game, and it's so rewarding when it's like, yeah, you get the win. It's really, 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 really good game, and I don't do any justice trying to explain it, but it's one of those games you need 5 players minimum, but it's a really I can guarantee you it's a really really fun game. So, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, it sounds like something that I've always wanted to play, but yeah, as you said, it's you need a lot of people.
that's exactly it. Like you need a lot of people to kind of yeah do it, and the game gets it's kind of funny though because like there's the game it changes with more players. So if you play with 5 players, it's 5 and 6 players. It's there's one special board, and then like you go to 7 or 8, and then 9 and 10, and then it's just like it's really difficult, like, and it's like things like, so if after at 8 after 6 and 7 play, or 5 6 sorry, at the 7th player the game changes where that Hitler doesn't actually know. So there's Hitler in the game, and like you don't like essentially at the beginning of the game, everyone kind of picks like an envelope where you don't know what your party membership is. No one does, and you kind of that's a secret to you. And like the thing with Hitler is that like in the smaller games, he knows who these fascist members are, but in the bigger games, he he knows who the fascist members are, but the fascist members don't know who he is. So he has to covertly signal to them while he's playing the game who he is. So it's this really, really tricky game to play, and it's one of those games you can play with adults, but yeah, and then you just kind of like send the kids to go and play them amongst themselves, and then you have a cracker of a time. Alrighty. Anyway, Shane's online. It's like it's morning over there. G'day, Shane. How you going, mate? Alrighty. I think we might as well kick it off. Welcome everybody. Again, first thing I'm going to say is please be advised that this meeting is being recorded. So if you are having your camera on, if you're wishing to turn your camera on or turn it off, that's okay. Except for Matt, he is the star of our show. So today is a bit of a final, the final kickoff for the final meetup for the year for 2022. And I thought we would just do a bit of a podcast, a little bit more of an informal chat, a chat with Matt, as per se. So, I'm just going to firstly say the sponsor of this video is Raid Shadow Legends. Actually, no, it's not. It's just a YouTube channel. No, NordVPN. No. What's the other one? Private Internet. No, it's not. It's not any of those. So yes, I'm just quickly making sure that no, that's not the right one. Our sponsor is Scriptrunner. So user group sponsored by Scriptrunner. Scriptrunner is fortunate. We are very fortunate that Scriptrunner pays our meetup costs, so that we don't have to actually do fundraising for that. So thank you to Scriptrunner. So if you're not familiar with Scriptrunner is the #1 tool for PowerShell management. Centralizing PowerShell automation is hard, but with Scriptrunner it's simple. Scriptrunner enables you to create, delegate, and execute PowerShell scripts in a simple and centralized environment with no fuss. If you think smarter, think Scriptrunner. Alrighty. That was my little jingle for today. So we're going to quickly jump back in. And we're going to now introduce the star of our show, Matt. So I'm just going to kind of just give a quick bit of a blurb about Matt. So I personally know Matt for a little bit of for a while now. We've actually met at the Brisbane PowerShell user group, which was probably in 2018.
I think it was around about then.
Yeah, so it was quite a long time ago. Yeah, so he's also been a contributor to the PowerShell community textbook. Matt is essentially the blurb that we provided is essentially he's a fan of DevOps, automation, PowerShell, and just making things easier. So welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. So I think we'll just start it off with tell us a little bit about your life. What got you into information technology / software development?
Sure. Okay. Well, basically, when I was younger, I did a TAFE course, and that got me into a PC repair industry. I was working for about 2 or 3 different companies, just basically fixing computers. This is like a long time ago. And I did that for roughly a year or so, and then I kind of realized I was getting a little bit bored, but a little bit sort of disheartened by always only ever looking at broken computers every day and fixing them. So I felt like I wanted to go more into the creative side of IT, and also this was just before the just before the .com boom, so just before 2000. So the interest in computers was getting a lot higher, and I remember getting newspapers on the weekends and seeing the job sections for people in IT being like many pages thicker than anything else. So there was certainly a big interest in IT at that time. So I decided I'd go back to university and do a Bachelor of Information Technology, which is kind of like the software side of things. So I did that at QUT, and almost straight out way after I finished that, I got a job at a place called QCOM, which no longer exists. And I was there for around, how long was that? Probably around about 9 years. And that was actually a very good place to get started in IT because they had a lot of the processes and best practices already documented, and you were kind of mentored quite well. So you were able to get a good understanding of how things were done in software the right way, rather than learning bad habits that some places, unfortunately, you can get. Then QCOM was bought out by Unisys, and I stayed there for a little while and wasn't really a huge fan of the huge company mentality and how things kind of got slowed down a bit. So I ended up moving to Mandalay Technology. I was there for about 2.5 years, mainly doing support for C# and WinForms based applications, mainly just all development work. And after a while, that's where I met my girlfriend, who then became my wife, but she had to leave the country and go to New Zealand. And I made the decision to follow her to New Zealand for a year and just basically became what they call flashbackers, which are like backpackers going around the whole country. And with just a little bit more money than your normal backpacker, so we could live it up just a little bit. So that was a lot of fun. Then came back and I got a job at Hewlett Packard. Now, when I was there, I was essentially working as like a support engineer. So I wasn't really a developer anymore, but mainly just maintaining and supporting these legacy systems that they had. And also they started getting into Microsoft BizTalk as well. And I put my hand up to support that because that's sort of been right on the global financial crisis. That would be the start of 2009, I think that was. So, so a lot of, it gave me a good experience on how to do support for systems, like, the importance of logging and monitoring in systems. And also, I'm sure yourself and other people on the call might be aware of just when you're doing support, you need to kind of be like a private investigator in some way, where you're kind of given very little information about a problem, and you need to go in and try and fill in the blanks and piece together what's actually gone wrong. That does take a while to sort of get the experience and the finesse on how to look and know what to look for and know who to talk to and stuff like that. So that was good experience there. After a while, after doing a lot of support with BizTalk and having pretty good success with that, I ended up moving to a company called Mexia in around about 2013. And I was there for about 6 years. Again, mostly initially doing BizTalk support again, but then moving across to just C#, WCF applications and microservices. And also during my time at Mexia, that was kind of where my interest in DevOps kind of really started taking off. Because I could see a lot of the deployment issues that people were having, where it was, a lot of times you'd have devs writing code, then you would have like Word documents which contain checklists, which get handed to the ops team, and then they follow the checklists and things don't go right, and they come back and they say, well, you didn't document it correctly, or we're saying you didn't read it correctly. And it was all just very a manual and error prone, and it wasn't really a fun experience for either us or them. So I got more interested in doing scripting and automation because I could generally see the benefit of it quite immediately. And I had a little bit of interest in PowerShell at the time, but I never really took off. One of my co-workers was what's his name, Kieran, he's down in Melbourne. He's one of the other authors on the book.
Yeah.
I forgot his surname at the moment. Anyway, he was there as well, and he was telling me how great PowerShell was, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'll have to check it out. And then I finally got into it a great deal, and I was like, oh wow, I wish I'd learned this a bit sooner. And it just kind of clicked for me, and just the way the language works and the pipelines, and there was a little bit of a learning curve, but once you get over that, it really is just fun and easy to use. So did a fair bit of PowerShell at clients, and I started looking into DevOps deployment systems. These are like TeamCity, Octopus Deploy, Azure DevOps, or VSTS, or Team Services, what it was called way back then. And then Mexia was bought out by Deloitte in that would have been 2019 or 18, or a few years ago. So here I was in a small company that's been bought out by a really, really big company again. And Deloitte wasn't too bad. And it was just, you feel like you're a pebble on a beach, a small piece of sand, and you just don't really feel like you can make much of a difference. But I was able to get some experience while I was there, just on the AWS side of the fence, because pretty much prior to this, I'd been almost 100% in the Microsoft stack, like in all the different tools and platforms. So I thought, I'm kind of curious to see what it's like on the other side. And I literally remember being signed up for a project, and which was like, the tech stack was AWS, Gradle, Jenkins, Java, and a whole bunch of other apps which I had literally never used before. So I know on different projects that people work on, sometimes it might be one or two new applications to learn or a new language to learn, but this one was 100%. Everything was like, it was like I had never worked in IT before. And I basically had like 2 weeks to frantically go through as many Udemy, Pluralsight, and YouTube courses to try and sort of get a bit of an understanding. And I was able to make a bit of headway with using Terraform on AWS. I was able to do some improvements there, but that was a real culture shock to the system, just complete reset of the whole tech stack. I was at Deloitte for a little while, and then I decided to move to MAQ Digital, which I did that in 2021, just over a year ago from now. Mainly because MAQ Digital were after someone that wanted to purely focus in the DevOps space. And while in previous jobs, I was still kind of in a developer role, but with some DevOps thrown in. I would occasionally get some DevOps projects, but they were starting to become more fewer and far between. So at MAQ Digital, my actual title was Solution Specialist in DevOps. So that just involved me going around to different clients who are having issues with their deployment process, or they're new to Azure DevOps. Again, this is all in the Microsoft space again. So I kind of had to flip back again from after spending a year in AWS. So from there, it was really just helping clients on their DevOps journey. Sometimes they're reasonably fair way in, they just need a little bit of tweaking and they're fine. Whereas other people are really right at the start and they're kind of just wondering, what's source control used for? So you kind of come in and just help them out and show them the better way of doing things. And literally just a few months ago, Brennan, a company named Brennan IT, have just bought out MAQ Digital, and I'm now currently, I've been through 4 acquisitions now. And right now, they're currently in the process of merging MAQ into Brennan, as well as another company which they acquired a few months earlier. So it's all a little bit chaotic at the moment, but I'm sure it'll settle around soon, because we've got like 3 medium-sized companies all just sort of coming together at once. Because I have noticed in the past, when you're a small company bought by a big company, you essentially say, okay, forget everything you did in the small company, you're doing everything the way the big company does it now. Whereas with this particular merger, what is making it different is you've got 3 similar sized companies coming together, and there's not really any one defined standard. It's kind of like you're taking some of this systems, or you need to migrate from one system over to here, and merging of Azure Active Directory, merging of team systems. It's just a lot to do. So, but they're slowly getting there, and I'm looking forward to doing a similar sort of role in the merged company space. So that's pretty much a good summary of what I've been doing for, when did I start? This is about 23 years.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm definitely one of the dinosaurs. Yeah. That's for sure.
A dinosaur, though, that keeps himself really current, which is probably the key thing, especially in today's world, is that technology is moving so quickly. I kind of see it as that you could be an MCSE 15 years ago, and the technologies that are used nowadays it's apples and oranges. So there's there's definitely yeah, it's just moving at such a rapid pace. And it's quite interesting you were talking through then. I kind of wrote some notes down here just to kind of ask some follow-up questions with regards to some of the places that you worked at. And I'm just interested to see when you worked at the computer shop, what hardware were you working with?
Oh, geez, that would have been Pentiums. So this is before. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Obviously, you got the old style hard drives with the great big
Mm.
ribbon connectors. And we had separate sound cards. I think they just started, I think, integrated motherboards with built-in sound cards and probably not even video cards yet. We're
Yeah.
just starting to come in.
So there were
Uh,
like, there's that kind of Pentium 1, Pentium 2 era.
yeah, and
Yeah.
these are like the old beige boxes. Sometimes they have drawers, and I would always complain to them saying like, I don't want a computer with a door because it's like an extra thing you have to open up, and you've got the CD-ROMs, and that even had floppy disk drives on a lot of them too. So yeah, that's a long time ago.
I was
So
gonna I was gonna ask is that if you had to glimpse in the future and see what computers were nowadays, and then kind of explain to yourself, or sorry, no, if you could explain to yourself back then what computers look like nowadays, where you can get funky lights that change colors, and you don't need floppy drives or even CD drives, which that would have been, or that was the bee's knees back then.
mm,
Yeah, well, how would you feel that what would you think in that kind of circumstance if you had to try and, or
um,
if you saw that, what would you think?
from
It,
the mindset of someone back in the 90s,
yeah,
I'd probably be blown away by just how visual things are now. Because back then it was more just around functionality, and also back then in the 90s it was rapidly changing. Like, you went from 386s to 486s to Pentiums to Pentium 2s, 3s, 4s, and whatever. And the rate of change in hardware was quite significant. I mean, you could build one computer and then a year later would be almost obsolete. Whereas nowadays you can build like a decently spec computer now and it will last you for quite a few years because you've kind of hit a lot of ceilings with the technology here. And I think that's one of the reasons why they switched more to blinging things up, trying to make things more appealing. Um, but also I think most of the innovation now is with graphics cards. I mean, they've certainly evolved a lot over the last few years, and they're almost like a mini computer themselves. So
as I was going to say, like trying to explain to myself, looking at this old, AGP GPU, it's this kind of tiny little
yeah,
card that you have, and then seeing, the latest NVIDIA, was it 4090, and it's so big that even a large, like you need an extra large case just to fit this thing in. Like it's just remarkable to see how far technology has come, and it's yeah, and I think this is kind of to draw into the next kind of the question, which is with really around the efficiencies that you saw within from that dev process where it was a manual process, so it was manual checks and things like that were being handed off to the ops guys and they were kind of manually reviewing this, and that's really, I think that it really shows a testament to what within, even in the investment within IT, that we can automate that. And I think that what we're building on is just going to get better and better. So, 10 years from now, we'll probably be talking about Ansible, being like, oh man, that's so rubbish. It's got this amazing tool. That's about, at the end of the day, then I think it's just that you've got to kind of stand on the shoulders of giants to kind of progress. And I think that, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about, you're like, hey, I don't like this process. I want to, progress it. I want to make it better. And I think that's probably the most, yeah, it's one of those things that I see in, especially with an automation that a lot of people are just like, hey, this needs to be, there's a better way to do it. So,
yeah, definitely.
yeah, I think so. You kind of already touched about it, where you tell me where you work, but what does your average day look like for people who don't work as in a managed service provider? What does your average day look like?
Well, my average day is quite varied. I mean, because I kind of do all things DevOps, ranging from doing assessments to clients or helping doing documentation for strategies and guidance and recommendations and best practice, that sort of thing, all the way down to writing PowerShell code for some clients who don't have someone available. So it is quite broad, but if I had to kind of summarize it, I'd probably say I'd spend, on average, about half the day coming up with standards and best practice for our internal um, uh, DevOps approach. And what I mean by that is looking at the different types of solutions that we have. Now, these can range across things like Azure Synapse or Data Factory or data related products through to just standard Azure functions or web apps. And now we're starting to get more into Dynamics 365 and Power Platform as well, which interestingly they didn't seem to have thought about DevOps initially when they were writing those tools. It sort of seems to have been added as a little bit of an afterthought, just from a tooling point of view. So that's definitely part of it. And the other half of the day would be just assisting clients on their DevOps journey and just helping them out and getting them into a better place. Because some companies out there really are struggling quite a bit. I mean, they may have had a lot of turnover, they may just have difficult systems, or just a lot of inconsistencies with how things are done. And by trying to just smooth it over and just make things easier for them is kind of the goal of the day.
It's actually quite interesting, especially you talk about that DevOps journey. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are having, are going on that journey. What does that look like to for them? And that's not just technically speaking; that's culturally within the team, and just breaking down a lot of those silos and those barriers amongst team members and saying, you guys are collaborating together on it. So it's one of these interesting talks. I remember listening to. By Michael White, who is he works at Microsoft, and it was he essentially building a full DevOps pipeline process for the Commodore 64, and it was quite remarkable. Essentially going through building it, essentially writing the code and building it, deploying it, and as some people were saying that then he actually had to go and download it. From the bulletin board system, so we had to set up a bulletin board system and then go and download it. But it couldn't be over it had to be over a serial connection. It couldn't be over some sort of it was he had to go very, very authentic with it because there was a lot of people put pressure on him for that. But it was a very, very interesting talk. So I think that, and it's something that even ourselves where I'm working at the moment is that we're going on that journey, and there's a lot of questions are being asked around that, and I think it's just it's one of those things that I think every organization, if they're really wanting to remain competitive, kind of has to move towards those faster deployment cycles. It's not necessarily they have to deploy multiple times a day. They just need to be able to optimize that process.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think I was going to ask you a question. I've totally forgotten the question now. Yeah, would you actually? Yes, would you say that there's a fair bit more architecture work that you've kind of do with regards to your role?
Probably not as much architecture work, because a lot of the times when I come in, the tech stack's already been predefined. So they're saying, like, for example, they're deploying to data factories or they're deploying to power platforms, and they already have something set up. It is a bit of an interesting mix between cloud-based, hybrid, and on-prem. It's all almost even. I mean, I would have part of me just naively assumed everyone's got to be in the cloud by now, but no, there's still a lot of on-prem stuff out there. So, so it's more for me. It's more around, I think, really just in the DevOps space, like coming up with code quality improvements, recommendations around pipelines and automated testing, and how to improve documentation. That's probably more my space. I do think we have people in our company that are more specialized in architecture as well. But usually for me, that stuff's already either locked in or handled by someone else.
So we'll quickly move on, and I wanted to ask you, what do you do in your spare time? What are your hobbies?
Yes, hobbies. I used to be pretty heavily involved with photography. Like I had a SLR,
Mm,
and I would often go out on weekends, just bushwalking or up mountains and stuff like that.
mm,
But since I've gotten married and I've had two young boys, I'm more of a homebody now, and so most of my hobbies at the moment are pretty much like to watch movies, spend time with the family. On the weekends, there's a lot of basketball for my sons on one of the days, so that pretty much takes up almost the whole day.
mm.
Uh, I do play some video games with friends occasionally, and there's also a fair bit of Roblox with my sons as well on their iPads. And I think it's quite a good platform because it is more, there's less adult sort of content on there. They're more like just simple games,
Mm.
and I like the fact that there's so many games out there, and it's good for my sons because their attention spans are so short. I mean, I might just play a game for a week or two, and then boom, they've just said, "Oh, we're sick of this. We're going to play something else."
Mm.
And you can just go in, play something else, then play something else, then play something else, and it doesn't cost you anything. I mean, you have the option of paying and buying things in game if you want, but that's all just that's all optional and doesn't really take away from the experience. And it's a good way for me to spend time with my boys as well. We're all there on our iPads just playing together.
It's something that I find. Do you find that did you play a lot of video games when you were younger?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Mm.
definitely. Yeah, we started off with a Commodore 64, and I played a lot of games on that, and then had eventually upgraded to a PC and heaps and heaps of games on there. A lot of real-time strategy, like starting off with Dune and Command and Conquer and Total Annihilation, Warcraft, Starcraft. And now, because I don't really have as much time, I mainly just play Dota.
Mm.
And I mean, there's also League of Legends as well, which is a similar thing, but most of my friends just play Dota and I just play with them um, every now and then. And that's always just good for just a quick, bash for about 40 minutes to an hour or so.
It's kind of funny that you touched on that. One of the things that myself and Wayne we try and do is we'll play probably 2 hours of Sea of Thieves every week. But during those 2 hours, one of the things that we do is we actually solve a lot of technical problems. So we'll be doing
Um,
something, but then we'll also be going, oh, so we're having this issue, and we'll actually talk the problem through. So it's a really cool, like it's one of those just cool moments that we have together to kind of nut out technical problems, but sail a ship or do something with it as well. But and then this kind of led you kind of already answered the next question, which was really the younger, and this is something I found personally as well, was that after having kids, my time to play video games is just evaporated, and it's not something that I don't particularly miss it. And it sounds kind of silly. It's just I don't miss it. Like it just means that when I do allocate time to play those games, I cherish not necessarily the game, but more just to catch up with friends and have a conversation with them. So the more the social aspect. I was saying, I am absolutely terrible at CFDs. I'm like awful, awful. But at the end of the day, though, it's just like it's just that having that ability to play, those kinds of things. And it's very, very interesting. You were kind of touched on, which you played a lot of RTS, and I know that for myself, I used to play a lot of first-person kind of genre games, and
mm,
it's the and I've kind of found that as I've gotten older, I've transitioned away from those kinds of games, and it's even just more towards I would actually prefer to go and play a tabletop board game with friends than to actually play a video game. And it's just because of the like, don't get me wrong, I still love LAN parties. Like there's nothing better than a LAN party. um,
mm.
but it's just, I don't know, I just enjoy the tabletop game a little bit more. It's a little bit more uh, yeah, it's a lot easier to kind of bring people into playing the game, and they don't have to worry about having some sort of entry for having a tech stack and something along those lines there. So yeah, that's, yeah, cool. I think we'll quickly move the conversation on. Um, Tell me about some of your favorite technologies and why.
Uh, well, I mean, I've already touched on them already, but I mean,
Mm,
obviously PowerShell is definitely my scripting language of choice. I mean, I've just been using it for many, many years now, and I'm just very comfortable with it. And it's good to see they've pivoted away from Windows PowerShell to going to PowerShell 7, which is runs across all platforms. And they've obviously opened it up so people can make their own contributions or issues and whatnot. Also, still like C sharp as the language, and I mean Java is very similar as well, but I don't know. I think I've just had better success with it, and I do like how some of the more recent versions of C sharp seem to be focusing more on simplifying your code a bit. Because I think, I mean, this may be a little bit of a controversial opinion, but a few years ago, I do think sometimes the design patterns for uh, developers were starting to get a lot more overly complicated. Like a good example would be, to a degree, dependency injection. Like, I mean, I find it on the few projects that I did with dependency injection, I think they may have gone overboard and they ended up basically abstracting out the entire application. So you ended up spending more than half the time just wiring everything up and passing all the objects into the child classes. And it just felt like it was you spend more time just doing the plumbing of the code rather than the actual code itself. And while I understand there are benefits of being able to mock out individual classes for your testing and all that, I did find us being in the strange situation where we spent so much time wiring everything up that we didn't have enough time to do the testing. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but obviously maybe there may just be limits on how far you can go using it and things like that. So it is good to see it's getting a bit more simpler.
mm,
For other things, I have a bit of um, attention deficit for tools that I use, where I constantly keep looking for new and better things. And these mainly in note taking and to do apps and like diagramming tools. Like you often see me constantly sort of just changing and chopping around, always looking for something that's slightly better. And I mean, like for note taking, I seem to have settled on Obsidian, which it does seem to be quite good and ticks a lot of my boxes with regards to being all markdown based and it's all on local hardware and it syncs after the fact you've changed it locally, and just the speed of the app too, and the customization you've got around there. But there's other really cool apps out there like Notion, Craft. Yeah, there's quite a few. So, and same with to-do lists. At the moment, I'm currently back on Things 3, which I kind of seem to go back and forth a little bit. I mean,
mm,
it's nice and simple, but I sometimes think it's too simple. I sometimes gravitate more towards Todoist, and that's quite good.
mm,
But again, I just I can never seem to find my happy spot between the two, and I just seem to bounce between the two of them as well.
mm.
So that's something I seem to waste a lot of time on, is just constantly keep assessing new tools and apps. And but I guess it's good to always be interested in new things that are coming out. And I do think if you suddenly become set in your ways and not wanting to change, then that's kind of when you start maybe becoming more of like a real dinosaur in the industry. I mean, I've seen people in the past, some people doing support, where they will look at log files through a notepad window on their desktop, which they left at the default size. And so you're looking at a small window trying to read log files. And I'm like, why don't you A, make it full size, or B, make it a better font to see and read? And you sort of see signs of people that are saying, okay, I've reached this point and I'm happy here. I'm not going to look any further. And I don't really want to be like that. I want to always be looking for improvements and things that I can do better. So yeah. So I guess that's not necessarily technology, but it's a habit, I guess I might
Yeah,
have.
yeah. I think that's a really, really good habit. Like Don Jones, said we're to be professional learners, and I think that's really, really appropriate in this kind of use case. Is that you're just continually looking for something that's new and interesting there. So yeah, I was going to ask one final question. I know I've kind of varied from what the questions I've sent you. One of the things I wanted to ask was within PowerShell, what is the one thing that you would like to see changed?
Oh, good question. Um, Possibly just better tooling support for like showing. I mean, there is some there to a degree, but I would like to see just going to the next level, like for showing individual parameters for like the common commandlets that you may have, and but you do sort of have it in a way, but I don't know. I just think something to make the discoverability of the PowerShell commands out there a little bit more user friendly. I
Hmm.
mean, you do have like get command and um, um, there are commands you can run to get that information, but just think lowering that barrier would help a little bit because
I find myself usually what happens is that you can use get command and then you can essentially tell it to go online. But usually I just find it easy just to jump in Google and go and just search for it that way and then go and read the documentation online. I think it's a little it's nicer formatted. But like you said, it's there.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, like a good example is I don't know if you've ever played with Bicep, which is like the
a little bit,
facade
yeah,
which
yep. It's
okay.
the extension. It's the extension. It's the sub language of the DSL of ARM. I would assume it's like, oh, sorry, assume it's a subset. That's of ARM templates.
Well, it's I think it's more like a facade over the
Hmm.
top of ARM, but the extension for Visual Studio Code is one of the best extensions I've ever seen. I
Yeah.
mean, it almost types it for you as you go through, and for example, you create a code block and you can just almost tab through and get the actual object you want with the version of the API, and it comes up showing, okay, for this API, these are the parameters that are mandatory
Hmm.
and you can find the optional ones, and it just makes it much easier to explore what's available there for you. So
Hmm.
I guess something a little bit more like that in the PowerShell space would be nice, and I think will be
Hmm.
well received.
I know that PS read line's really making a massive difference in that circumstance, like just having the kind of the history, but
Okay.
and it's kind of pre-filling a lot of it out. It's just that um, I don't like I'm not sure if it's in Visual Studio Code. I know Jordan will be able to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, it's yeah. I know I said I was going to ask you. I'm going to ask you one more question.
That's fine.
um, so this is I thought about this question, and it was kind of just a bit of a reflection of your journey through information technology slash software development. And what advice would you give to university students that are willing to start, information technology as a career or slash software development?
Um, well, definitely what we just touched on before.
Mm.
Always be willing to keep learning. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. You can certainly own up to them if you make them. The most because we all make mistakes, but the important thing is that you learn from them and improve. Um, Always have a bit of a passion for what you're doing as well. A lot of times I see people just do like the absolute bare minimum and move on, and sometimes you think if you just do a little bit more polish here and there, you can really make something a lot better. So and yeah, just sort of have a drive, do the learning, have the passion, and don't be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to own up and say, "Oh, I don't quite know this, or I can get back to you, or I
Mm.
need help in this area." Because I do think most people in IT are willing to help out other people who are willing to learn.
Mm.
So that's, in a nutshell, what I would say.
I think that's really really good. Um, it's really good. I'm not going to ask any more questions. Anyway, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for
That's okay.
yeah, sharing your life story. It's always really interesting to hearing one's life story and how they got to where they are, and just kind of seeing that, everyone's life story has a different. It's always different, and I've seen some people, do IT strictly. You started off in a computer shop, and it's really really it's really really interesting just to see, the progression that you took to get to where you were. So yeah, anyway, thank you for joining us. I'm just going to quickly throw it out to the audience if anyone else would be interested in asking any questions, or and then if not, we'll leave it there for the evening, and we'll start to wrap it up.
I just have a quick question. Is there a language or a product or something that you're interested in trying out in the near future?
I'm trying to learn more around Dynamics 365 and Power Platform. I've had a little bit of exposure to that, but I need to get a bit more up to speed on that. That's one of the interesting parts of DevOps is you have to become a real shaman where you kind of know a lot about a little. No, sorry, no, a little about a lot, I should say. Because you need to be aware of like the deployment processes for all different kinds of solution types. I mean, I know some people might say, okay, I'm a JavaScript developer or front-end developer or back-end developer. Here I need to kind of be across all the different technologies that clients are using. And I know where I currently work, it's definitely just in the Microsoft space that does limit it nicely. But yeah, there's still a lot in there as you're well aware. So those are the spaces that I'm interested in at the moment and looking to skill up in.
Cool, thanks.
That's really good. I just quickly checked with chat. I don't think anyone is asking any questions in chat, so we'll leave it there. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining. So like I said, this is the last meetup for the year. Next, obviously, it's going to be Christmas next month, which has kind of definitely snuck up on all of us. So I wish everyone a very, very Merry Christmas. Safe holidays. Drive safe, please. Yeah, we'll be back. I think it's either January or February. I think it might be February, so we'll take a couple of months off. And then when we'll be back, I believe we're going to be having, if I recall, it's either myself giving a bit of a talk about ScriptRunner, some of the product, some of the things that I've been working on, or alternatively, I might invite Nicholas Birch from the UK on to give a little bit of a talk about his role, which is very, very interesting because he works in the medical field, and he is a PowerShell gun. So that's a very, very interesting. It's a very, very interesting story, which I'm really interested to kind of ask him how he got into that. So, anyway, thank you everyone for joining. Yeah, and we'll have a safe Christmas, and we'll see you next year. Anyway, bye bye.
Thank you.